always pronounce however, and he used the word a lot, however. He always, we didn't make fun of him or anything, but every time he did however, we just looked at each other like, okay, he meant however. And he was a very, very good speaker. He used pauses incredibly well. He sometimes we pause so much, you think, hey, should I clap? It was wonderful. I love the difference in speeches. Next we have our first speaker, and her speech is Love Notes. No, that's wrong. Okay, Kim will be experimenting with a condensed version of her marketing speech, okay, for her new book entitled Unlocked: The Secret of Lasting Intimacy. Kim's field of expertise is romance and intimacy, and more specifically, how it relates to God and the Bible. She will be sharing from her life as well as historical discoveries she has made in the Old Testament book, the Songs of Solomon. Kim has been married to her high school sweetheart.
That's different.
Okay, see, we didn't have a joke master. Doug, for 37 years. And they have two awesome sons, Tyler and Austin. The title of her speech is, How Did We Get So Far Off Track? Kim, how did we get so far off
Let's go back to 1978. I was a 19-year-old blushing bride, and I was absolutely tormented with guilt. My big question back then was, if God created sex, then why did it feel so wrong? Well, the logical explanation to me was, if God created it, then I wanted to go back to the Bible and find out what He had to say about it. And I had been taught that there was a book in the Old Testament that was called the Song of Solomon. And it was a book on romance and intimacy. And it starts out like this. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for his love is more delightful than wine. Gets off to a really hot and steamy start, doesn't it? And then it goes downhill from there. Because no one can figure out what that book is about. It's full of eroticism. King Solomon compliments his bride, or his beloved, 8 times by telling her how much he likes her breasts. And that gives you a little indication. But it helped a little with my guilt, but it left a lot of unresolved issues. Fast forward, it's 1993, 15 years down the road. My husband and I are in our mid-30s. We have 2 sets of friends that are our very best friends, couples. And we're not hanging out with one couple, we're hanging out with the other couple. And the first couple I'm going to call Ken and Barbie because they were gorgeous. The other couple I like to call June and Ward Cleveland because they were the epitome of this perfect little family. The sad part of my story is that within that 1 year, both husbands left their wives for other women. And I was devastated. It was like lightning hit me here and hit me here, and I was literally singed. Not long after Ken and Barbie's divorce, I had this heart-to-heart with Barbie. And I just had to ask her, did you have any, looking back, any indication, any warning signs? And she was like, oh yeah, I did. She said, I just didn't think it mattered. She said, Kim, everything else was so good, I didn't think it mattered. She said, but we were only having sex once and twice a year. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This gorgeous couple, I figured they were doing it like rabbits, right? So, I was having a conversation with my husband about 2 days later on a Saturday afternoon. We were sitting in the dining room, and we were pretty regular, so I got real flippant and said, well, at least we have good sex, right? That's what I heard, too. So I asked him again. And I got silence again. And the third time, I kind of squeaked out, we do, don't we? And he just looked at me with eyes and said, Kim, I cannot tell you what you want to hear. And I was just, that was the most painful silence I had ever heard. It was traumatic. It was life-changing. So this time I went back to the Song of Solomon, but I had a different question. My question was, God, if you gave us this book, how come nobody understands it? What happened between the time it was written and now that no one understands it? So I started digging and I started doing all this research. And I discovered some things that just blew my mind. And I'm going to share one of those things with you tonight. I've given everyone a handout, and I'm just going to hit a few of those things on the handout. Did you know that the Bible was on the brink of extinction for over 1,000 years? 1,000 years. And it was sequestered from the public. How did that happen? Well, when the Roman Empire collapsed, the Catholic Church slid right into power as a governing authority. And there was a priest by the name of Jerome. And this priest rewrote, he translated the Bible into Latin as the Latin Vulgate. Anybody who had anything other than the Latin Vulgate, it was confiscated. And then there was this other high-ranking priest, his name was Origen. And he believed that sex was so vile and so evil that he actually rewrote the Song of Solomon and tried to extract every bit of eroticism out of it. His claim was that it was a spiritual analogy of Christ and his church. In fact, sex was so evil to him that he castrated himself. And what's really, really scary about that is this man was teaching young women. He was spreading his dysfunction. So they went on, the church just started making laws on sex. And they said that sex was for procreation only. If you were enjoying it, you were sinning. And it wasn't until about the middle of the 1400s and the 1500s that some men rose up. Now this is 1,000 years down the road. That men rose up and said, we got to get the Bible back in the hands of the people. And they actually got their hands on a Vulgate, and they were handwriting it in different languages, and of course it was getting confiscated after they could write it. And it was about in the middle of the 1400s that the print press was invented, and so they were actually able to print the Bible and get it back in the hands of the people in the 1500s. So what happened in that more than 1,000-year period from the 2nd century all the way to the 15th century? What was happening? Well, the people were being deeply indoctrinated that sex was vile, it was carnal, and it was evil. And they were also being taught that the Song of Solomon was an allegory, and all of the sensuality was taken out of it. So what happens when people have been indoctrinated for that long, is that stuff just doesn't fall away. See, we pass that junk and all that dysfunction from generation to generation. And we still have it today, and I'm living proof of that. So how do we get back on track? I just showed you how we got off track. But how do we get back on track? Well, I believe I just told you how. Because we can't fix something if we don't know if it's broken or how it got off track. And the second thing is, once people understand that the Song of Solomon is truly an erotic story that makes perfect sense, it will literally transform marriages one bedroom at a time.